So today we're going to talk about where in the United States you should be renting or buying. Be sure to wait till the end because we're going to do pros and cons of each. So the first thing that you always need to look at is affordability. And I think there's been no time other than right now as people are talking about affordability, meaning what does it cost in rent and what does it cost in mortgage, plus all the other things that it might be if you actually buy a home. In addition to that, you have to take a look at your individual wage growth, your income potential, and the cost of living in an area that you might be considering. So one of the things that I know a lot of you like and I love are these graphs. And Adam did a great job specifically going through the affordability from year to year. You can go back and look at 2021 and they have the exact same chart and you can see how it's moved to 2022. Essentially, this is a chart that shows where it's best to buy and where it's best to rent by city, by state, by county. And as you can see from these concentric circles, that the smaller the circle, the smaller the population. So if you want more detail in an area that you're considering, just go to Adam and take a look at what represents the data behind that circle, and you can get specific information. The one thing I want to point out is that everything from the mid-United States west is basically says to rent, and everything from the Midwest United States east basically says to buy, with the exception, of course, as some of these coastal cities, which are still green and say to rent. So as you're looking at this chart, you're either looking at it from two different points. One, as an investor, buyer, homeowner, or two, as a renter. And you need to understand that people look at things very differently from their own individual point of view. So let's first look at it from a viewpoint of an investor buyer, because it's going to be very different from that of a renter. If you're an investor, the key to your entire property is income. You also have to look at expenses, but it's always going to be rent and occupancy. What's clear to me, if you focus on the Western United States and focus on some of these areas, then most of the people in these areas are probably going to be looking at renting versus buying because of affordability issues. What you're looking for here as an investor is a big difference between home ownership or mortgage price and rent. You want as big a gap as possible because the ability from a renter to go from a renter to a home is harder in these particular areas because of affordability. So now let's look at it from a renter's viewpoint, because they're going to look at this map very differently than an investor would look at it. So if you're a renter and you want to buy a home, you're probably looking at relocating to some of these areas for affordability and being able to be a homeowner maybe for the first time. Yes, a lot of people rent by choice, but a lot of people definitely want to buy a home or buy an investment at some point, and they're going to be looking over here where it's more affordable to buy. So just like we talked about on the last slide, if the rent and the mortgage are close, let's say a rent is $1,500 and a home mortgage is $1,600 or $1,700, that's not necessarily good as an investor, but it's great as a renter because their ability to move up is a lot tighter. So if you're an investor, you want to buy in areas that have high job growth and there's a big disparity between the mortgage and the rent. If you're a renter, you want to also be in areas that have high job growth where there's a smaller gap between the mortgage and the rent. Now, this is all very, very different right now because of the work from home scenarios that you have. You could literally buy and own and invest in the middle of the country and actually work over here as an example. Now, a couple things. You all know this. Real estate is, of course, local, which means that we do not have a nationwide occupancy. We do not have a nationwide rent growth. We do not have a nationwide expense number. It's all individual and it's all very, very local. So if you drill down a little bit deeper in that chart, you can see that home prices are growing faster than rents in nearly 90% of the nation. But prices still are more affordable in almost 60% of the U.S. markets. In other words, renting remains more financially viable in most of the populous urban areas. Just go back to the chart and look at the bigger bubbles that are located in green. But before you go out and make a decision, let's talk about the pros and cons of buying and renting. On the buy side, we are now faced with interest rate risk because the Federal Reserve has said that they're going to raise rates 3 to 4 times this year. What that means is that your mortgage payment, if it's variable and not fixed, could potentially go up. Also on the buy side, you're going to have property taxes. And if you scour the country, you can see that governments are going after homeowners and landlords for property tax increases. The other piece on the buy side, of course, is all the capital work. Think about roofs and landscaping and all those kinds of things. Those are real things on the buy side. Another one is, of course, property insurance, which is very different on the renter side, which is more renter's insurance. One thing to pay attention to in 2022 is as mortgage rates go up, the affordability to buy goes down and people will move over to the renter side and those bubbles will get even bigger. Now let's look at the pros and cons of the rent side. One is flexibility. You can have a 6-month lease and you can be somewhere else. 2, you can fix your rent. You can ask the landlord for a long-term deal at a fixed rent and hedge all of this inflation that's happening, and you kind of have a certainty on what it's going to be. 3, you have no capital work. In other words, the landlord's on the hook for the roofs and the landscape and all those things. 4, you should probably get renter's insurance, but it's not going to be as much as property insurance. 5, no property tax. That is the landlord's expense. But all things being equal, this is a lot more short-term, this is more long-term, and of course, if you can cover this with a renter, then the renter can actually pay down your mortgage for you. Hope you guys liked today's video. Smash the like button if you like it. See you later.